Well, the Ghana Union of Traders Association, they are bringing a new dynamic into our political conversation because they are hoping to get all the key contenders for, I should say, key presidential contenders ahead of the 2024 election to sign some sort of document, okay? To have some sort of gentleman's agreement or gentlewoman's agreement, if you like, in terms of what they will deliver. But the question is this feasible? Is it something that these leaders, whichever one comes to power, can even be held to? Joining us for a conversation, we have Dr. John Osai Kwapong. He joins the conversation on this. Doc, good morning to you. Thank you for joining the conversation.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Right. So we have GUTA opting for this contract, social contract, if you like. It reminds me of my studies in politics, with whoever likely would be president come 2025. But the question is, from its fundamentals, does it hold any water? There are stipulations even in the Constitution in terms of economic benefits that leaders should ensure that our citizenry has. Even that, they don't provide, and no one is able to take them on, even per the Constitution. So how do you think this will work? Is it feasible?
You know, the symbolism is very important, right? So it reminds me of the 1994 midterm elections in the US, where the Republican Party drafted what they call Contract with America, and stipulated these, I think there were about 10 key things that they were going to do if elected to Congress. And for the first time in so many years, they took control, particularly of the House of Representatives, right? And so whilst it wasn't, quote unquote, a signed thing, the symbolism was very important. They framed it as, if you elect us, we will do these things. And if we don't, in the next midterm election, vote us out of power. I see the reverse in in GUTA's approach, which is, I'm sure they've heard campaign promises over the years that deals with their quote unquote interest and the interest of the group that they represent. And I'm sure governments have come and gone without them experiencing or seeing the full fulfillment of those promises. So what I'm gathering then is this idea that, okay, we're going to enter into some kind of, like you said, a social contract that says, these are the issues of importance to us as an association and our members and the people or the organizations that we represent. It will be very interesting to see how the candidates respond to it. But it is also election year. And so I can see the candidates responding positively to it. Right?
You think they'll bite? They'll take the bait?
I think so, because I don't think they want to be the one. I mean, if GUTA, is that, quote unquote, strong of an organization that can mobilize, a lot of people going into this election, I don't think any candidate or political party would want to risk being the one that didn't want to enter into this sort of gentle person's agreement.
But technically as well, Doc, I think there's a way of playing this without necessarily getting roped in. If you get into any agreements and you come and you don't fulfill those agreements, it's going to cost you, and it's going to cost you big time. Ghanaians are becoming much more sensitive to promises that are made that are not kept. Would it really be in the interest of these parties to go down that road? Now, here's one thing. The GUTA president, Dr. Joseph Obeng, on the back of Dr. Bawumia's policy plan for Ghana, his blueprint, he said that, yes, he was excited, those were his words, about some of what Dr. Bawumia had said in terms of what it would mean for business and even the taxes that would be taken off e-levy and all of that. That's a slippery slope, very dangerous, because if you look at the 5.9 billion or so that a future Bawumia government, if he gets elected, would lose, then the question is, would he actually be able to stick to his promise? And that's where the devil is. So would it really be in the interest of the parties to go down this road?
Yes, politically it would be. Because like I said, we're going into an election year. I don't think you want to be seen as the candidate or as the party who wasn't willing to, quote unquote, enter into this sort of agreement, even if it's not signed, this symbolic agreement, because you also don't want to create the perception that maybe you don't have any intentions of honoring certain things. That's why you're a little hesitant. I mean, it could be perceived that way.
So,
I mean,
so this is more cosmetic.
Please say that again.
So this is more cosmetic rather than we really mean to do this. It's more cosmetic. Like, okay, let's join the bandwagon, because if we don't, we may get punished. But we may not necessarily mean to fulfill all of those things.
Well, I think it has, elements of both, right? I mean, the candidate maybe, can be both sincere about it, but also politically calculate that it is in my best interest to be able to do this. At the end of the day, though, it is the enforcement and the accountability of it. If this agreement is not met, I think that becomes the much bigger challenge for GUTA. Because if the candidate doesn't, quote unquote, honor the things that are important to you as an organization and to the members of your organization, what do you do? What are the tools that you're going to resort to try and either remind them of, hey, this was your promise to us, or you really have to get this thing going, except for, let's say, if you have to wait till the next election.
All right, so it could be a case of not just GUTA, but the generality of the people, once bitten,
yes,
twice shy. GUTA is emphasizing, though, that the agreement will be anchored on the candidate's economic agenda and manifesto pledges. So basically, it appears it's going to be different strokes for different folks. You said this, and for example, Dr. Baumia, I'm taking away the e-levy, I'm taking away this and that. So they would hold him to that. And then for maybe President Mahama, whatever he would say on the back of the economy, they would hold him to that as well. For whichever other person, whichever other candidate, they would hold them. So it wouldn't be a blueprint for everybody. It's different depending on what you say. That makes it very wide.
But it's also, I think it's also a really good thing, right? That there's this growing consciousness that these politicians, one election after the other, promise a whole lot of things, some of which are not fulfilled. And there has to be a growing sense of, we need to hold you more accountable to these things that you promise us. Because the more promises go unfulfilled, it creates a sense of cynicism among citizens, right? If you look at Dr. Bawumia's speech, in the end, he actually highlights that, right? He makes the statement that, I'm sure you even be tempted, I'm paraphrasing, but something to the effect of, I'm sure you'll be tempted to say, we've heard so many of these ideas and promises before. And that, for me, points to what happens when a lot of these promises go unfulfilled, one election cycle after the other. But I also think that if enough groups, more than just GUTA, other groups, and even as citizens, if we become more conscious of this and begin to hold politicians more accountable, even if it means, election, one term and, you're out, one term and you're out, I think it would create a different, or at least it would improve the politics a bit in terms of one, being measured in the number of promises made to the people, but also taking more seriously the incentive to fulfill some of those promises, because you know that the people are now fully awake, and non-fulfillment of these promises have major political consequences.
Right. So in the end, what do you make of this call moving forward? How do they actualize this? I mean, from where you sit, you also dabble in some of this. How do you expect them to properly box in these presidential candidates so that what they seek to achieve, they can achieve? And from the standpoint of the political actors and the parties moving forward, what do you think? How do you think they can couch what they are doing in this engagement with GUTA? That will be my final bit to you.
Yes. So I'm picturing a scenario where probably GUTA would reach out to the candidates and their campaigns, have a number of meetings, iron out what these are supposed to be, and maybe ask that there's some kind of a quote unquote a document signed. I'm not sure how willing the candidates or the parties will be to sign such a thing, but it's one way that I see this playing out. Or maybe after a series of meetings, a joint statement that says, we met with GUTA, they've expressed, their concerns, they've expressed their desires, these are the things they want to see, and we pledge to do our very best to meet them in some kind of a joint statement. But that's how I see that playing out. Or the last scenario would be once the party manifestos are published, GUTA then takes its public position on it to say, you have promised these things in your manifesto. This is what we are going to do in terms of we are going to monitor, etc., and make sure that if elected, these things will be done. And if not done, this is how we would respond as an association.
Well, thank you very much for joining the conversation. Right before you go, though, I see a message from Raymond Abiu. I don't know what your take would be. He says, GUTA is doing politics here, and we must not allow this type of behavior. Listening to the GUTA president the other day, he came across as someone trying to campaign for Dr. Bawumia. The 2024 election, it goes on and on. But what GUTA is fighting for is for business, right? Business. Right. The business community. Yeah. And they will look out for what is best for them. They've been burnt time and again. So they will look out for what is best for them in terms of doing business and making money. That's the bottom line. Would you fault Dr. Obeng for what he said?
Not at all. And I think this is something that even more interest groups should actually do, right? More of us as citizens should step into that space to say, maybe education is important to me, and I want to see these things happen. Maybe health is important to me. I want to see these things happen. Campaign finance is important to me. I want to see these things happen. Right. I think it really creates more vibrancy in our civic spaces and a way to hold our politicians more accountable.
All right. Well, Dr. Osai Kwapong, we're very grateful for your time with us this morning on this beat. Dr. John Osai Kwapong is a CDD fellow. Still to come, we'll be telling you about the Independence Square and the state of it. We've also got updates on the murder of the owner of the Royal Cozy Hotels, popularly called Drapa Dubai. Really sad incident. We'll be telling you more about that. But up next, we have a conversation with the John Ajekum Kufuor Foundation. Up next, Tuesday.